Welcome to Madabo Motshabi channel. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe before you leave. Spirituality Information, Journey in the Fields of Forever Part 42. A few more days then I'm gone again, I answered. We walked for a little while then sat on the sand watching the tide come in. There are times when words are grossly inadequate to describe a moment, times when the best thing to say is nothing. It was as if the first person to utter a sound would be guilty of breaking the magical spell. So it was as we sat there that evening hardly saying a word. Finally it was time to return to the hotel. I got up brushing the sand away as she stretched her arms motioning me to pull her up. This evening, I quipped, Henry Herbert Nibbs was out there somewhere as I drew her up effortlessly closer to me. She looked into my eyes, smiled and held my hand for a while. Tenderly I moved my fingers through her golden hair, drew her face a little closer as her half-opened lips reached up to mine. And out there somewhere on a foreign strand the full moon peeked out from behind the clouds. There are seconds when all eternity is condensed into an instant, when an instant reaches across eternity into glorious universes. There are moments whose feelings you want to freeze into emotional ice cubes to be defrosted and savored at some future time. The kiss, passionate and tender at the same time, permeated my entire being, leaving me breathless, caught between time and space in an aura of light and darkness between two realities. Such was the mystery of this enigmatic woman who I held in my arms. Ever so slowly she drew away until I could see her face by the dim evening lights. The wind blew a little stronger and a slight chill filled the air as I smiled at her and whispered, "That was wonderful." We stood arms around each other quietly looking toward the ocean. Here again was a chance to make this moment into something more permanent. I knew I wanted to take her back to the hotel or perhaps just stay with her on the beach for the rest of the night. But once more, just like the other times before, I felt the urge to move on. Exquisite as the moment had been, it was only ships passing in the night. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That was nice, really nice," she replied. "Strange how things turn out, don't you think?" I said yes, she responded, and then added, "You know, every once in a while wherever I'm, I'll wonder if you ever found your Penelope out there somewhere. Ships passing in the night. Good night, John. Happy journeys." She turned and walked slowly back to the hotel. I didn't follow but stood watching her move farther and farther away. Before disappearing over a little ridge, she looked back, threw me a kiss and was gone. I never saw her again. We hardly knew anything about each other, the type of work we did, where each other came from, what were our likes and dislikes, only that for a brief moment in time two souls met in their journey in the fields of forever. The ringing phone ended my reverie and brought me back to the present. It was Marla announcing that Gideon had arrived and we would meet in the restaurant instead of the balcony in about 5 minutes. Age New Spirituality, Inspirational Stories Part 55. To come back to one of our main points. We say that we can't do good without at the same time doing some evil, or do evil without doing some good. Knowing this, how can we work? There have, therefore, been sects in this world who have in an astoundingly preposterous way preached slow suicide as the only means to get out of the world, because if a man lives, he has to kill poor little animals and plants or do injury to something or someone. So according to them the only way out of the world is to die. The Jains have preached this doctrine as their highest ideal. This teaching seems to be very logical, but the true solution is found in the Gita. It's the theory of non-attachment, to be attached to nothing while doing our work of life. Know that you are separated entirely from the world, though you are in the world, and that whatever you may be doing in it, you're not doing that for your own sake. Any action that you do for yourself will bring its effect to bear upon you. If it is a good action, you will have to take the good effect, and if bad, you will have to take the bad effect. But any action that is not done for your own sake, whatever it be, will have no effect on you. There is to be found a very expressive sentence in our scriptures embodying this idea: even if he kill the whole universe, or be himself killed, he is neither the killer nor the killed, when he knows that he is not acting for himself at all. Therefore Karma Yoga teaches, don't give up the world, live in the world, imbibe its influences as much as you can, but if it be for your own enjoyment, sake work not at all. Enjoyment should not be the goal. First kill yourself and then take the whole world as yourself, as the old Christians used to say. The old man must die. This old man is selfish idea that the whole world is made for our enjoyment. Foolish parents teach their children to pray, O Lord, thou hast created this sun for me and this moon for me, as if the Lord has had nothing else to do than to create everything for these babies. Don't teach your children such nonsense. Age New Spirituality Inspirational Stories Part 58. There was a great sage in India called Vyasa. This Vyasa is known as the author of the Vedanta aphorisms, and was a holy man. His father had tried to become a very perfect man and had failed. His grandfather had also tried and failed. His great-grandfather had similarly tried and failed. He himself did not succeed perfectly, but his son, Shuka, was born perfect. Vyasa taught his son wisdom, and after teaching him the knowledge of truth himself, he sent him to the court of King Janaka. He was a great king and was called Janaka Vida. Vida means without a body. Although a king, he had entirely forgotten that he was a body. He felt that he was a spirit all the time. This boy Shuka was sent to be taught by him. The king knew that Vyasa's son was coming to him to learn wisdom, so he made certain arrangements beforehand. And when the boy presented himself at the gates of the palace, the guards took no notice of him whatsoever. They only gave him a seat, and he sat there for 3 days and nights, nobody speaking to him, nobody asking him who he was or whence he was. He was the son of a very great sage, his father was honored by the whole country, and he himself was a most respectable person, yet the low, vulgar guards of the palace would take no notice of him. After that, suddenly, the ministers of the king and all the big officials came there and received him with the greatest honors. They conducted him in and showed him into splendid rooms, gave him the most fragrant baths and wonderful dresses, and for 8 days they kept him there in all kinds of luxury. That solemnly serene face of Shuka did not change even to the smallest extent by the change in the treatment accorded to him. He was the same in the midst of this luxury as when waiting at the door. Then he was brought before the king. The king was on his throne, music was playing, and dancing and other amusements were going on. The king then gave him a cup of milk, full to the brim, and asked him to go 7 times round the hall without spilling even a drop. The boy took the cup and proceeded in the midst of the music and the attraction of the beautiful faces. As desired by the king, 7 times did he go round, and not a drop of the milk was spilt. The boy's mind could not be attracted by anything in the world, unless he allowed it to affect him. And when he brought the cup to the king said to him, "What your father has taught you, and what you have learned yourself, I can only repeat. You have known the truth. Go home." Age New Spirituality, Inspirational Stories Part 59. Thus the man that has practiced control over himself cannot be acted upon by anything outside. There is no more slavery for him. His mind has become free. Such a man alone is fit to live well in the world. We generally find men holding 2 opinions regarding the world. Some are pessimists and say, "How horrible this world is, how wicked." Some others are optimists and say, "How beautiful this world is, how wonderful." To those who have not controlled their own minds, the world is either full of evil or at best a mixture of good and evil. This very world will become to us an optimistic world when we become masters of our own minds. Nothing will then work upon us as good or evil. We shall find everything to be in its proper place, to be harmonious. Some men, who begin by saying that the world is a hell, often end by saying that it is a heaven when they succeed in the practice of self-control. If we are genuine karma yogis and wish to train ourselves to that attainment of this state, wherever we may begin we are sure to end in perfect self-abnegation. And as soon as this seeming self has gone, the whole world, which at first appears to us to be filled with evil, will appear to be heaven itself and full of blessedness. Its very atmosphere will be blessed. Every human face there will be God. Such is the end and aim of karma, yoga, and such is its perfection in practical life. Our various yogas do not conflict with each other. Each of them leads us to the same goal and makes us perfect. Only each has to be strenuously practiced. The whole secret is in practicing. First you have to hear, then think, and then practice. This is true of every yoga. Age New Spirituality Inspirational Stories Part 63. The question has been raised as to from whom this universe comes, in whom it rests and to whom it goes, and the answer has been given that from freedom it comes, in bondage it rests and goes back into that freedom again. So when we speak of man as no other than that infinite being which is manifesting itself, we mean that only one very small part thereof is man. This body and this mind which we see are only one part of the whole, only one spot of the infinite being. This whole universe is only one speck of the infinite being. And all our laws, our bondages, our joys and our sorrows, our happinesses and our expectations, are only within this small universe. All our progression and digression are within its small compass. So you see how childish it's to expect a continuation of this universe, the creation of our minds, and to expect to go to heaven, which after all must mean only a repetition of this world that we know. You see at once that it's an impossible and childish desire to make the whole of infinite existence conform to the limited and conditioned existence which we know. When a man says that he will have again and again this same thing which he is having now, or as I sometimes put it, when he asks for a comfortable religion, you may know that he has become so degenerate that he can't think of anything higher than what he is now. He is just his little present surroundings and nothing more. He has forgotten his infinite nature, and his whole idea is confined to these little joys and sorrows and heart jealousies of the moment. He thinks that this finite thing is the infinite, and not only so, he will not let this foolishness go. He clings on desperately unto Trishna and the thirst after life, what the Buddhists call Tanha and Tissa. There may be millions of kinds of happiness and beings and laws and progress and causation, all acting outside the little universe that we know, and after all, the whole of this comprises but one section of our infinite nature. 2. Age New Spirituality, Inspirational Stories Part 67. What does it say? Work incessantly but give up all attachment to work. Do not identify yourself with anything. Hold your mind free. All this that you see, the pains and the miseries, are but the necessary conditions of this world. Poverty and wealth and happiness are but momentary. They don't belong to our real nature at all. Our nature is far beyond misery and happiness, beyond every object of the senses, beyond the imagination, and yet we must go on working all the time. Misery comes through attachment, not through work. As soon as we identify ourselves with the work we do, we feel miserable, but if we do not identify ourselves with it, we do not feel that misery. If a beautiful picture belonging to another is burnt, a man does not generally become miserable, but when his own picture is burnt, how miserable he feels. Why? Both were beautiful pictures, perhaps copies of the same original, but in one case very much more misery is felt than in the other. It's because in one case he identifies himself with the picture and not in the other. This I and mine causes the whole misery. With the sense of possession comes selfishness, and selfishness brings on misery. Every act of selfishness or thought of selfishness makes us attached to something, and immediately we are made slaves. Each wave in the chitta that says I and mine immediately puts a chain round us and makes us slaves, and the more we say I and mine, the more slavery grows, the more misery increases. Therefore Karma Yoga tells us to enjoy the beauty of all the pictures in the world, but not to identify ourselves with any of them. Never say mine. Whenever we say a thing is mine, misery will immediately come. Don't even say my child in your mind. Possess the child, but don't say mine. If you do, then will come the misery. Do not say my house, don't say my body. The whole difficulty is there. The body is neither yours nor mine nor anybody's. These bodies are coming and going by the laws of nature, but we are freestanding as witness. This body is no more free than a picture or a wall. Why should we be attached so much to a body? If somebody paints a picture, he does it and passes on. Don't project that tentacle of selfishness, I must possess it. As soon as that is projected, misery will begin. Age New Spirituality, Inspirational Stories Part 80. Absolute equality, that which means a perfect balance of all the struggling forces in all the planes, can never be in this world. Before you attain that state, the world will have become quite unfit for any kind of life, and number one will be there. We find therefore that all these ideas of the millennium and of absolute equality are not only impossible, but also that if we try to carry them out, they will lead us surely enough to the day of destruction. What makes the difference between man and man? It's largely the difference in the brain. Nowadays no one but a lunatic will say that we are all born with the same brain power. We come into the world with unequal endowments, we come as greater men or as lesser men, and there is no getting away from that prenatally determined condition. The American Indians were in this country for 1,000 of years, and a few handfuls of your ancestors came to their land. What difference they have caused in the appearance of the country. Why did not the Indians make improvements and build cities, if all were equal? With your ancestors a different sort of brain power came into the land, different bundles of past impressions came, and they worked out and manifested themselves. Absolute non-differentiation is death. So long as this world lasts, differentiation there will and must be, and the millennium of perfect equality will come only when a cycle of creation comes to its end. Before that, equality cannot be. Yet this idea of realizing the millennium is a great motive power. Just as inequality is necessary for creation itself, so the struggle to limit it's also necessary. If there were no struggle to become free and get back to God, there would be no creation either. It is the difference between these two forces that determines the nature of the motives of men. There will always be these motives to work, some tending towards bondage and others towards freedom. Age New Spirituality Inspirational Stories Part 88. Similarly, we find in regard to ourselves that our tendencies are the result of past conscious actions. A child is born with certain tendencies. Whence do they come? No child is born with a tabula rasa, with a clean, blank page, of a mind. The page has been written on previously. The old Greek and Egyptian philosophers taught that no child came with a vacant mind. Each child comes with 100 tendencies generated by past conscious actions. It did not acquire these in this life, and we are bound to admit that it must have had them in past lives. The angst materialist has to admit that these tendencies are the result of past actions, only they add that these tendencies come through heredity. Our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents come down to us through this law of heredity. Now, if heredity alone explains this, there is no necessity of believing in the soul at all, because body explains everything. We need not go into the different arguments and discussions on materialism and spiritualism. So far the way is clear for those who believe in an individual soul. We see that to come to a reasonable conclusion we must admit that we have had past lives. This is the belief of the great philosophers and sages of the past and of modern times. Such a doctrine was believed in among the Jews. Jesus Christ believed in it. He says in the Bible, "Before Abraham was, I am." And in another place it is said, "This is Elias who is said to have come." All the different religions which grew among different nations under varying circumstances and conditions had their origin in Asia, and the Asiatics understand them well. When they came out from the motherland, they got mixed up with errors. The most profound and noble ideas of Christianity were never understood in Europe, because the ideas and images used by the writers of the Bible were foreign to it. Take for illustration the pictures of the Madonna. Every artist paints his Madonna according to his own preconceived ideas. To get more information, visit http://www.spiritual-simplicity.com. Age New Spirituality, Inspirational Stories Part 84. Through the vistas of the past, the voice of the centuries is coming down to us. The voice of the sages of the Himalayas and the recluses of the forest, the voice that came to the Semitic races, the voice that spoke through Buddha and other spiritual giants, the voice that comes from those who live in the light that accompanied man in the beginning of the earth, the light that shines wherever man goes and lives with him forever, is coming to us even now. This voice is like the little rivulets that come from the mountains. Now they disappear, and now they appear again in stronger flow till finally they unite in one mighty majestic flood. The messages that are coming down to us from the prophets and holy men and women of all sects and nations are joining their forces and speaking to us with the trumpet voice of the past. And the first message it brings us is, "Peace be unto you and to all religions." It is not a message of antagonism, but of one united religion. Let us study this message first. At the beginning of this century it was almost feared that religion was at an end. Under the tremendous sledge-hammer blows of scientific research, old superstitions were crumbling away like masses of porcelain. Those to whom religion meant only a bundle of creeds and meaningless ceremonials were in despair. They were at their wits' end. Everything was slipping between their fingers. For a time it seemed inevitable that the surging tide of agnosticism and materialism would sweep all before it. There were those who did not dare utter what they thought. Many thought the case hopeless and the cause of religion lost once and forever. But the tide has turned and to the rescue has come. What? The study of comparative religions. By the study of different religions we find that in essence they are one. New Age Spirituality Morning has been all night coming Part 94. The point I want to make is that although rituals have their place, what's more important is what we do for one another, how much we love and help one another. I don't care for incense or worship as much as I care for people, animals, trees, and the other aspects of my creation. When the intent is to give service to the inhabitants of your world, then you'll truly find your peace. Only then will you come to truly know yourself, and in so doing know me better. His voice trailed into a whisper as he turned to Gideon and Marla and said, "It's time to get John back to his home." "But Lord," I argued, "I still have so many questions. Can't we? I know you want to ask about Madai, about your dad, your children, your work, and all your other concerns. I'll meet with you again in a short while and we'll go over some of those questions. But for now you need to return to your regular schedule. You've a plane to catch and your children are waiting for you. Marla and Gideon will see you back to the airport." God walked over and threw his arm around my shoulder as he led me to the door. Gideon and Marla followed behind us. "Don't forget now, John," God said, "to just practice being in the presence of God. Find that secret place where the troubles of your world can't touch you." And yes, he added as an afterthought, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I'll have a special treat for you soon. Via con Dios." A second later he was gone. Marla decided to remain at G&M Enterprises for a while but promised that she would call me soon. Gideon and I took the elevator down to the first floor, caught a cab and went directly to the airport. We didn't speak much. I believe he wanted me to assimilate most of what had happened today. Patting my back, he said goodbye and promised to be in touch. A few hours later I had left the big city far behind me. There was a sweet sadness in leaving my dear friends, but today I knew that I'd experienced a most learningful adventure and I couldn't wait for our next meeting. New Age Spirituality Inspirational Stories Part 27. How can this be done? We see that the impression of any action to which we attach ourselves remains. I may meet 100 of persons during the day and among them meet also one whom I love, and when I retire at night I may try to think of all the faces I saw, but only that face comes before the mind, the face which I met perhaps only for 1 minute and which I loved. All the others have vanished. My attachment to this particular person caused a deeper impression on my mind than all the other faces. Physiologically, the impressions have all been the same. Every one of the faces that I saw pictured itself on the retina and the brain took the pictures in, and yet there was no similarity of effect upon the mind. Most of the faces, perhaps, were entirely new faces, about which I had never thought before, but that one face of which I got only a glimpse found associations inside. Perhaps I had pictured him in my mind for years, knew hundreds of things about him, and this one new vision of him awakened hundreds of sleeping memories in my mind, and this one impression having been repeated perhaps 100 times more than those of the different faces together will produce a great effect on the mind. Therefore be unattached, let things work. Let brain centers work incessantly, but let not a ripple conquer the mind. Work as if you were a stranger in this land, a sojourner. Work incessantly, but don't bind yourselves. Bondage is terrible. This world is not our habitation, it's only one of the many stages through which we are passing. Remember that great saying of the Sankhya, the whole of nature is for the soul, not the soul for nature. The very reason of nature's existence is for the education of the soul. It has no other meaning, it's there because the soul must have knowledge and through knowledge free itself. New Age Spirituality Inspirational Stories Part 20. It was an old custom in India for princesses to choose husbands in this way. Each princess had certain ideas of the sort of man she wanted for a husband. Some would have the handsomest man, others would have only the most learned, others again the richest, and so on. All the princes of the neighborhood put on their bravest attire and presented themselves before her. Sometimes they too had their own criers to enumerate their advantages and the reasons why they hoped the princess would choose them. The princess was taken round on a throne in the most splendid array and looked at and heard about them. If she was not pleased with what she saw and heard, she said to her bearers, "Move on," and no more notice was taken of the rejected suitors. If, however, the princess was pleased with any one of them, she threw a garland of flowers over him and he became her husband. The princess of the country to which our king and the sannyasin had come was having one of these interesting ceremonies. She was the most beautiful princess in the world, and the husband of the princess would be ruler of the kingdom after her father's death. The idea of this princess was to marry the handsomest man, but she could not find the right one to please her. Several times these meetings had taken place, but the princess could not select a husband. This meeting was the most splendid of all, more people than ever had come to it. The princess came in on a throne and the bearers carried her from place to place. She did not seem to care for anyone, and everyone became disappointed that this meeting also was going to be a failure. Just then came a young man, a sannyas, handsome as if the sun had come down to the earth, and stood in one corner of the assembly watching what was going on. The throne with the princess came near him, and as soon as she saw the beautiful sannyasin, she stopped and threw the garland over him. The young sannyasin seized the garland and threw it off, exclaiming, "What nonsense is this? I am a sannyasin. What's marriage to me?" The king of that country thought that perhaps this man was poor and so dared not marry the princess, and said to him, "With my daughter goes half my kingdom now and the whole kingdom after my death," and put the garland again on the sannyasin. The young man threw it off once more, saying, "Nonsense, I don't want to marry," and walked quickly away from the assembly. The only true self-improvement. When we browse the web, we can notice that almost every directory has a category that deals with self-improvement. This subject has become very popular. Every human being that at least possesses a little bit of conscience tries to improve herself, or is at least interested at a thought of such a striving. The higher the moral level of a man, the stronger is his or her desire to improve. Those people who are convenient but don't feel very good about themselves, if they miss the feeling that they work on their own improvement, will at least read articles and books how to improve themselves, but as a matter of fact their reading will be the only one thing that they will really do. On the other hand, there are also people who really want to improve themselves and actively try to follow any well-meant piece of advice how to become better. However, the problem is that hardly any out of all the available advices which are supposed to show you the way how you can improve yourself is really effective and safe. To be frank, I've to say that the most effective way how to improve is even very uncomfortable. To understand my point of view, you should know that I believe in reincarnation, in harmony in all nature, and in the balance of all the opposites. I also believe that all people together are one whole, and because everything is related to any other thing, in the same way the destiny of each one of us is related with the destiny of all other people. As opposites reign to us all and balance always tries to be restored, we should avoid any extreme in our life to prevent the opposite extreme in the life of other people. If we are too rich, others will have to be too poor. If we are too healthy, others will have to be too ill. If we are too happy, others will have to be too unhappy. If we are too good, others will have to be too bad. Because we are one whole, then to improve this whole, one must try to improve both himself and all the other at once. To improve all mankind, to help all mankind, it means to help the most suffering ones first of all. But how can they be helped? Who is ill and cannot be healed, let him enter new body in the next life of his or her soul by euthanasia. Who has suffered a serious accident, let him be helped by all other people. Who is too poor and doesn't have enough money to life, let him be gifted by the rich. Remember that if you helped any other man, you helped yourself, because if there will be no excessive suffering on the world, neither your soul will have to excessively suffer, whether it will be in its present or future life. So any help to any other man, in fact, is a help to yourself. True self-improvement consists in the restriction of one's own happiness for the purpose of helping all the other people by sharing any above-average possession with them. Everybody should be averagely rich and averagely happy. Only then he will neither suffer too much nor he will cause any occurrence of too much suffering people. Let everybody live in a medium happiness with medium possession, and let him have the same price like that of all other people. Now ask yourself, are you the rich who will not support the poor with your money? Do you enjoy a good state of health and at the same time don't feel with those who suffer most, and you're not willing to bear a part of their big pain on your own shoulders? If it's so, then please stop reading articles and books about self-improvement, since you'll never improve yourself in the proper way. For the only self-improvement is to sacrifice a part of what you've got to help the other. There is no other self-improvement. Don't leave before you press like button below and subscribe to this channel. As a subscriber, you will receive a new notifications every time a new video is uploaded. Good luck.